head over to the Replit Day 10.1 Days in Month coding exercise. Here, you'll notice that I've copied over the isLeapYear function that we created a while back in another coding exercise. Now, the first thing I want you to do is to modify this function so that instead of printing leap year or not leap year, we're actually just going to return true if it is a leap year and false if it's not a leap year. Because we're going to be using that function in the next function that you're going to modify, which is a function that's going to tell you how many days there are in the month that you specify. So, for example, if I was to call days in month and passing in the year as 2022 and the month as 2, then I should get an output of 28, as in there's 28 days in February 2022. This is the reason why we need to know about leap years, because in a leap year, there's actually 29 days in February. You're going to combine the output from this function as well as this list of days in the month in order to modify this function to output the number of days in a month when this line of code is called. It's really important that you don't change any of the code below, but you are going to modify this function and add more lines of code in it. Take a look at the hints if you get stuck, but otherwise, pause the video and give it a go. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change each of these print statements so that it returns a Boolean instead. So this one should return true and this one should return true. Now, when it's not a leap year, I'm going to return false instead. This way, basically, when we call this function isLeap passing in a year, then we'll get the output as either true or false. So we can now use that inside our function days in month. But before we do that, we need to get some inputs. We need to know what is the year and what is the month the user is interested in. So that is going to be passed in using these positional arguments. We're going to ask the user to input a year and input a month, and then each of these pieces of data gets passed into here and here, which will end up inside our function ready for use. The first thing I'm going to check is if the year is a leap year. How are we going to do that? Well, we're going to use our function here, isLeap, passing in that year, and then the output will be checked using the if statement. Remember that the way that if statements work is that if something is evaluated to true, then it's going to carry out the line of code below. But if it was evaluated and it turned out to be false, then it's going to skip this line of code. So instead of using true or false, or if 3 is bigger than 2, we're going to use the function isLeap and pass in the year that we got as an input. So this way, when a year is tested in this function, then it's going to output either true or false, which is going to replace this part of the code because it's the output from this function. So now if that output is true, namely it is a leap year, then we're going to check if the month they were interested in was the month of February. So if the isLeap year is true and the month is equal to 2, well, in that case, then we're going to return 29 because there's 29 days in February in a leap year. If this is the case, then this function is going to end right here when it returns 29. But if this is not the case, then it's going to bypass this line of code and we can output the number of days in a month for any other condition. So when it's not a leap year, we can go ahead and simply just use the return statement to tap into that list called month days. And we're going to pull out the value at the current month that's being requested. But remember that because lists start counting from 0 and the month that the user is going to be interested in doesn't start from 0. So if they're interested in January, then this month, instead of being 1, should actually be 0 to pull out this 31. So then we actually have to subtract 1 from it. So now if we test the code and we enter the year 2022 and the month of February, then we get the correct output, which is 28. That solves the challenge. Now, some of you, I know, might have gone even further, because we talked about using the return statement to catch out any situations where there might be invalid inputs. So you could, if you wanted to, also add an if statement that checks whether if the month is greater than 12 or if the month is less than 1. In these cases, then it's actually an invalid input, and you could just return invalid month. And you could of course do the same thing for the year, and this way it ensures that our function doesn't progress unless we have clean data. But this, of course, is not necessary to complete the challenge, because we're now able to figure out the days in the month using this leap year function's output and the output from our days in month function. In the next lesson, I'm going to address something that a lot of students are thinking at this point. And the question is, why return at all? Why not just simply print the outputs instead? Because this way it seems to end up doing the same thing, right? It's still going to print this down here. And if we just added a print to this return and a print here and got rid of this one, then it would still behave exactly the same. This is exactly what I want to talk about in the next lessons. So see you there.